So again, looking back at the last 3 years, celebrating where you're at right now and the challenges, obstacles that you've gotten through is so important. So that's really what I want to share today. I want to share I want to celebrate you. So I'm not only celebrating my third year doing this podcast and the love and excitement I have and the passion I have for sharing with you each and every week, but I want to celebrate you listeners and what you've been through and where you're at right now. Welcome back to another episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual. I'm your host, Teresa. So this is a special bonus episode because this is my third anniversary of celebrating 3 years with Enthusiastically Spiritual podcast. So yes, back in June 3rd, 2020, Tom and I were over in Australia, during COVID in a small house out near Bathurst in New South Wales. And in a little place underneath a bunk bed, I did my first episode and recorded it on June 3rd. So much has happened in the last 3 years and so much growth and awareness and learning from doing this podcast. And I've absolutely loved every single moment of it. And I wanted to share a little bit of that with you today, as well as a little regrouping of the past 3 years. So in the past 3 years, as of where I'm at right now, I've released 180 episodes and I'm almost up to 240,000 downloads. I have had such a wonderful time exploring with guests from around the world that have been on my podcast. And those guests have brought forth so much amazing energy, amazing insights through their books, through their life, through their journeys, through their stories that I'm so, so grateful for, each and every one of them. But you know who I'm really grateful for? Honestly, I'm grateful for you listeners all over the world, because yes, you guys are all over the world. So for creating this podcast from my heart and doing it because at that time when we were in COVID, there was nowhere else we could do we couldn't do any more Mind, Body, Spirit festivals. We have done one in Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney, and then COVID hit and it was over. So Spirit was suggested to me, do a podcast. And I said, okay, so I'll try a podcast. I knew nothing about it and just had heard about podcasting, but at that time had no idea what I was going to be involved in and what it all took to really create each of these episodes, as well as creating, beautiful stories and beautiful guest experiences for you, the listeners. So in the time since I've had this going and the expansion that's happened, it has been so heartwarming for myself to know that there are other like-minded people like you around the world listening in. There are like-minded people like you around the world passionate about learning more about the spiritual part of your journey and really exploring that through Mind, Body, Spirit episodes, which is what this podcast is about. So really embracing all that's the last 3 years has happened. And not only obviously collectively, we've gone through so much in the past 3 years, but so has this podcast. It's gone through ups and downs. When I first started, I did episodes by myself. I did 2 a week for quite a few months because there was nothing else to do. And I didn't have any guests to join me. So at that time, I just shared some stories. So if you haven't listened back to some of the first season, in the first few months, you might want to go back and listen in. There's some really interesting stories that I share about some of the unseen parts of what I was going through and have gone through in my life. And I share a lot of those really personal stories. So you might want to go back and check out some of those episodes. And then I started finding some guests to come on. And to the point where now guests come and approach me and want to be on my program because it's been out a while and because it's gained some popularity, and they just find it really interesting to come on and share about their services and what they're offering in the world. So I'm so, so grateful for all the people, guest-wise, that have found me through the years. So back to you listeners. What I would like to do on this third anniversary is really give you an opportunity to look back and regroup where you've been through in the last 3 years. And, as far as this podcast, obviously it's about spirituality. So for myself, I'm, passionate and I'm on a mission from God, which I like to say, to really share with others how to make spirituality practical, how to tune in and understand what you're feeling energetically and discerning what's me, what's not me, how to work with those 4 types of perceptions that we have within us, and to really understand what's going on in all this unseen aspect of ourself. And so for you, the listeners, and everybody else on the planet, which is something I shared recently at a metaphysical fair, because Tom and I do a lot of fairs and expos in the Midwest in the US, is I shared that, people kept asking me about spirituality, and there was a lot of people that came up that were actually new and had never been to a metaphysical fair. So that was super exciting. But a question that I was posed a couple times too was, um, is everyone have these gifts? Is everyone able to tap into their intuition? And I was so excited because this question really brings up and stimulates like my heart and my passion so much to have people understand this part about themselves. So I share with others that yes, absolutely every single person on the planet is a soul in a physical body, not a physical body with a soul. So every single person on the planet, being a soul, being an energy being, has backing from their team of spiritual helpers, has the ability to learn how to work with that, also has those 4 types of perceptions that I talk about often in some of these episodes, and also in my work I do with TNT Spirit Works. We have 4 types of perceptions of the gift of prophecy, the gift of vision, the gift of intuition, and the gift of feeling. And so the exciting part is, yes, every single person, I don't care if you're religious, you're atheist, you're Buddhist, you're whatever, Muslim, it doesn't matter. We all have this beautiful energy inside of us, and we all have this ability to tap into the spiritual part of who we are. And that's just excites me beyond belief. So I just want to again say how thrilled I am that there are people around the world like you listening that are open to exploring more about the spiritual part of your journey. And now, of course, for myself, I mean, this is what I'm here to do. So I came in, this is my passion. This is, later in life is when I opened my gifts up and really knew that this was what I was here to do. So this is my journey, my joy, celebrating, each person understanding who they are as an energy being, how to work with their psychic abilities, how to tune into their guidance. This lights me up inside. So to know that you are out there in the world listening in and or watching on our YouTube channel on TNT Spirit Works YouTube just excites me beyond anything I can even tell you. Well, obviously I'm telling you that now. So I just want to, again, take a moment, and I want to really have you look back at the last 3 years, because since 2020, the whole world has gone through shifts. And it always is, right? We're always going through changes, but these have been big ones. These have been massive changes. And I think that's why at this moment, so many people are coming to these expos and fairs and saying, I've never been to one of these before. What is this all about? Because they've had this grand opening, this soul quake that's really broken them open. And now it's like, what do I do with all this? So for yourself listeners, if you can think back to 2020, and you might want to take a few moments and think back to what were you doing in the beginning of 2020? Where was your life at? What were you involved in? Who were you surrounded by? And especially thinking in the first part of 2020, like January 2020. And then looking through the last 3 years, you might want to also journal or think about a question of what challenges has come to your life. Was it, the isolation? Have you had people pass on? Have you maybe lost a job? Have you maybe had to relocate? Or maybe people in your life has moved away from from who you are. You're no longer speaking to them. And with those challenges, really embracing what you've been through, because oftentimes we don't look back and we don't regroup where we've been and how things have really come full circle to where you're at now. So in looking back at January 2020 and where you're at, and then taking a moment and looking at the last 3 years, what have you been through as a challenge? Then taking that beautiful, whatever it is written down, and well, it may not be the most beautiful, but it may be exactly what you've gone through and what the challenges you've had. Now looking at where you're at today. Where are you in your with your spiritual part? Where are you with your mental, your physical, the business of you, your social aspects, maybe even where you live? Are you living somewhere different? And taking that moment and absolutely celebrating in whatever way you can for yourself. Because again, a lot of us have been through some pretty traumatic stuff the last 3 years, and some have had more trauma than others. But really celebrating this moment for yourself, because you are amazing and you are here still. And if you're still here, that means that you still have something to work with while you're here. You still have a journey to go on. Otherwise you would have checked out. Otherwise you would have, gone on and not been here anymore. So what gifts do those last 3 years give you for today? Now, if you're not in a good place and you're like, Teresa, I just can't find anything good. Well, there has to be something. And you know what I tell some people that come to my fairs also? They come up and they share with me all these really intense things they go through psychically, right? Like, all kinds of things I don't want to talk about, but no, really, really intense things. Some things they don't want to talk about, but they resonate with me and they know that I'm open. So they share things with me. And then they say, what do I do with all that? Or I'm really freaked out about it. And, sometimes I just say to them, well, you know what? You're doing really good because you're still 6 feet above the earth. You're not gone. You're here. So again, looking back at the last 3 years, celebrating what, where you're at right now and the challenges, obstacles that you've gotten through is so important. So that's really what I want to share today. I want to share I want to celebrate you. So I'm not only celebrating my 3rd year doing this podcast and the love and excitement I have and the passion I have for sharing with you each and every week, but I want to celebrate you listeners and what you've been through and where you're at right now. And then what's coming in the future. Because even though there's a lot going on energetically and in the world period, there is hope. There's a lot of hope. And I hope that you can find, that's kind of funny, but no, really, I hope that you can pick out a piece for yourself and go, you know what, there is hope. And I do know that tomorrow, if not today's a good day, tomorrow will be a better day. And so that's one thing I wanted to share today in this mini morsel episode. I just wanted to come on and just say how grateful I am for the last 3 years, for all the sharings I've had, for the people that come on. And I'm getting emotional because it's been such a big 3 years. And I want to leave with also, I want to share some people that came on Apple Podcasts recently and left reviews for me, 5-star reviews, and means so much to me. So one of them is James Cook, 527. He wrote, "Thank you. I really like this podcast." And then Carlos Cooper, 4, wrote, "This has been a wonderful help to me. I am very grateful." And then Michael Maddox, 59, wrote, "I love your stories and your storytelling. This podcast is a beautiful gift that I really need right now. Thank you." And I thank each of you. And it's funny, isn't it cool that they're all 3 gentlemen that wrote the last 3 reviews on my Apple Podcast review thing. So that meant a lot to me too, that there's not only women out in the world exploring and listening to my podcast, but there's also men. So thank you for those beautiful reviews and those testimonies of how much you're enjoying this podcast, because I love it so much and I'm so grateful for it. So that's what I wanted to come on and do today. I just wanted to share a little bit about this bonus episode, just regrouping the last 3 years, taking time for yourself to regroup the last 3 years and where you're at right now, because right now is a gift. And no matter what we've all been through, please celebrate how much you've made it through and that you're still here, which is a big deal. So thank you all so much from my heart for listening in, no matter when you found my podcast over the last 3 years, no matter if it was the first year, maybe towards the second end of the year, or this last 3rd year. I really appreciate you so very much. And I appreciate you liking and sharing and subscribing to this podcast and expanding that out to anyone else that you know might enjoy it. And until next week, just remember that life is too short to not be enthusiastic about your unique journey.